Good afternoon. This is me, teacher Linda, and I am going to explain the elements of a short story for you to create a short story when we finish this unit. Okay, the elements that we can find in a short story are the first is the definition is a short story tells us about a single event or experience. Fictional, not true. We can use from 500 to 15,000 words in a length, and it has a beginning, a middle, and an end. Creates an impression on the reader and includes all parts of plot: introduction, conflict, rise in action, complication, climax, and resolution. The elements of the short story are the setting, the characterization, the plot, the conflict, the climax, the resolution, the theme, and the point of view. Let's analyze each one of them. Every story needs characters. People, could be animals or other creatures, but we need characters in a short story. Also, we need the vocabulary, and we start by the protagonist of the story. That could be the hero, the leader of a cause, the good guy, or for example, the guy that we see here in this picture, that is Batman. The protagonist is the good guy, and here we can see some examples like Harry Potter, Iron Man, Shrek, and also we have to have our antagonist, the opposing force, the bad guy. For example, in this case, the Joker. The protagonist here is Batman and the antagonist is the Joker. The antagonist is the bad guys or the bad force. For example, we can see here some examples. Can you name them? Let's make this quiz. I'm going to give you 1 minute to think about the protagonist and the antagonist of these movies. Cinderella, the protagonist is Cinderella and the antagonist is, let's think about it, The Lion King. The protagonist is, and the antagonist is Scar. The Little Mermaid. Ariel is the protagonist. Who is the antagonist? Jack and the Beanstalk. The giant is the antagonist, and we don't know the protagonist. Let's think about this for 20 seconds. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, and 20. Those are the answers. Cinderella, the stepmother. Simba, Scar. Ariel, Ursula. Jack and the giant. Okay, the characterization is how we learn about the character. We learn about them through how do they look, how do they act, what do they do, what do they say, how other characters respond to them and feel about them. This is the way in which we can start writing our story, by thinking about the characterization of our character. Also, there's going to be a direct characterization in which the narrator tells us directly about the character. For example, Molly is a brat. Indirect characterization is recognized by the fact that it shows you a character traits through their actions or dialogue. Molly came into the kitchen and slammed down her backpack and said, I don't care what you say. You are not my boss of me, Mr. Minipants. So don't tell, it's much more fun. So we have here characterization when the narrator makes a narration about the character. It's something very very popular in our stories, and indirect is when we have dialogues. Okay, the setting, we have to think about the place in which our story takes place. For example, tell the reader where and when the story takes place. You need to identify the people, places, times, and objects involved. Use sensory details and figurative language to create a vivid picture with your words. The time and the place of the story. Was it in the past, in the future, in a garden, on mountains, in a castle? Let's think about the setting. Okay, the plot. A series of events through which the writer reveals what is happening to whom and why. The parts of the plot: introduction, conflict, rising actions, complication, climax, and resolution. Here in this diagram, we have an example of how we can create our story. We can start by the exposition, write the background or what happened first, rising action, write about leads, up to maintain problem to or conflict here. The climax, the main problem. The falling action could be related to the solution, and the resolution is like the end of the story. In a short story, the conflict is the problem in which the story is the problem in the story that needs to be resolved. In a short story, this will not be complex too. Great stories have an intriguing conflict. For example, man versus nature, man versus society, man versus machine, man versus man, man versus himself. A hint about what will happen next is called foreshadowing. For example, if you hear the Jaws theme music, then you know someone about to get eaten. When we listen to the sound in the movie that's a dun 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 dun, you know that something mysterious is going to happen. So we need to put a foreshadowing moment in our story. The climax, when the action comes to its highest point of the conflict, and is usually when the story can go either way. The climax is the most exciting part, the resolution, the story's action after the climax until the end of the story, the conclusion of the story, and the message the writer intends to communicate. Telling the story is like in Spanish, like the analysis, I forgot the word, enseñanza. Short story, okay, the point of view, the position of the narrator of the story and what the writer sees from the vantage point. Choose first person, third person limited, and third person omniscient. When you say it is said that, it is narrated that, it is obvious that, and you can say, I think that, I can say that, I believe that, but you use the third person to narrate the things that you think about the story. The point of view is the perspective of the story. We see here an example of the thriller pigs that rodent wolf tried us to eat. And we have here another point of view from the wolf. The true story of the thriller pigs. I was framed, I just wanted to borrow a cup of sugar. So we have two perspectives. always in a story. And here are some tips for you to learn how to use the quotation marks, the periods, the commas, the exclamation points, how can we write dialogues in stories, and a little practice with a story for you to create. And let's remember that you have here this material to practice, and the elements of a story are setting, characterization of characters, plot, conflict, climax, resolution, theme, point of view, and that's it. There are some elements that we have to take into account, the same elements, and also a quotation mark. This is related to the homework that is here. Ok, bueno, entonces ya pudimos observar que estábamos entonces comprendiendo cómo escribir una historia corta. Entonces, ¿qué van a hacer ustedes? Ya esta parte la hice yo, que era cómo escribir, cómo pensar acerca de las ideas de una historia corta, y de igual manera les adjunto el PowerPoint Presentation. Para repasar cómo ordenar eventos relacionados pues con este tema, entonces vamos a desarrollar un taller que se llama The Packet of Biscuits. Es solo práctica, no hay que adjuntarlo a Moodle, pero hay que hacerlo. Les preguntaré en clase sobre este taller. Cuando hayamos terminado entonces de ver el tutorial, de hacer este taller, vamos a trabajar en individual o en parejas en la siguiente instrucción. Entonces, ¿cuál es el objetivo? Escuchar sobre una historia y reorganizar el orden de los eventos. ¿Qué instrucciones tenemos entonces? Desarrollar los siguientes ejercicios en los links en los cuales debes leer o escuchar una historia y reorganizar el orden de los eventos. ¿Qué deben hacer ustedes? Tomar captura de los resultados en los ejercicios y adjuntarlas en Moodle en un documento de Word bien presentado. Les reitero que puede ser individual o en parejas. Con los ejercicios hay que hacer los de este link y los de este siguiente link. En este siguiente link van a encontrar una página, en esa página van a bajar hasta donde dice Listening. De allí van a encontrar los ejercicios de actividad, Activity 2A, 2B, 2C. Toman los capturas de sus ejercicios, de sus resultados y me los adjuntan acá. ¿Cómo es el ejercicio? Este es un ejercicio evaluativo, esta es una nota de este taller y este es otro. Escribir un cuento corto para niños ilustrado con una enseñanza siguiendo las instrucciones dadas en la diapositiva. Ilustrado con una enseñanza y siguiendo las instrucciones dadas en la diapositiva. Bueno, entonces, write a unique, interesting, and original short story. Use literary elements we have discussed. ¿Cuáles son estos literary elements? Los que están en este PowerPoint que les acabé de presentar. Necesita tener 2 páginas en las cuales ustedes redacten esa historia como mínimo y al menos 20 líneas de diálogo. Si tienen dudas o inquietudes, ustedes me comentan. ¿Cuándo es la fecha de entrega de este trabajo? Octubre 22, es decir, en 10 días hasta las 11:59 de la noche. Espero que me hayan comprendido. Si tienen dudas o inquietudes, se pueden comunicar conmigo por mi teléfono o por el correo electrónico. Bye bye.